Once there was a king who ruled a vast kingdom. He had a daughter, Princess Graciosa, who was not only beautiful but also kind-hearted and obedient. Her mother, the queen, had passed away many years ago, leaving a void in the palace. Despite her loss, Graciosa grew into a young woman who was loved by everyone in the kingdom for her gentle nature. However, trouble was on the horizon. A duchess named Grognon, who lived nearby, was known for her cruelty and ugliness. Her name suited her well, for she was grumpy and mean to all who crossed her path. One day, while the king was hunting near Grognon's castle, the duchess invited him inside. She greeted him warmly and offered him a drink in her grand wine cellar. The king was amazed by the rows of wine barrels. "Would you like champagne? Or perhaps Burgundy?" Grognon asked with a sly smile. The king, impressed by the display, inquired, "Are all these barrels yours?" Grognon nodded and replied, "Yes, and I would be delighted to share a drink with you." She opened one of the barrels, but instead of wine, golden coins spilled out. Shocked, she quickly opened another, and out came pearls and diamonds. "What is this?" she exclaimed in surprise. "Someone must have replaced my wine with this mess." The king, who loved wealth more than anything, said, "With this mess, you could buy my entire kingdom." Grognon saw her chance and said, "I will give it all to you if I can become your queen." Without hesitation, the king, blinded by greed, agreed to marry her the very next day. Grognon, however, had one condition. She demanded full control over Princess Graciosa. The king, thinking only of his future wealth, agreed without a second thought. When he returned to the palace, he told Graciosa about his decision to marry Grognon. Although Graciosa had heard terrible things about the duchess, she did not want to displease her father and remained silent. She only smiled and wished him happiness, though her heart was heavy with worry. That evening, Graciosa wandered into a quiet forest. Her heart ached with fear and sadness, and she began to cry softly under the shade of the trees. Suddenly, a bright light appeared before her, and a handsome young man stepped out. "Princess Graciosa," he said gently, "do not cry. I am Percinet, a fairy prince. I have loved you for a long time and have come to help you. I have the gift of invisibility and have watched over you in secret." Graciosa was startled, but soon felt comforted by his kind words. They talked for a long time, and Percinet promised to protect her from any harm. The next day, Graciosa prepared to meet Grognon. She rode her magnificent horse to greet the duchess. When Grognon saw her, jealousy burned in her heart. Graciosa's beauty shone like the sun, and everyone admired her grace. Furious, Grognon demanded to ride Graciosa's horse. The princess politely handed over the reins, but as soon as Grognon mounted, the horse began to buck and throw her off. Humiliated and enraged, Grognon accused Graciosa of plotting to harm her. She ordered that the princess be whipped as punishment. However, when the whip struck Graciosa, they magically turned into soft feathers. The princess felt no pain, only a gentle tickle. That night, Percinet appeared in Graciosa's room. He advised her to pretend that she had suffered greatly from the punishment to avoid further trouble. Graciosa followed his advice and remained quiet. The wedding between the king and Grognon took place with grand celebrations. But Grognon was not satisfied. She wanted everyone to praise her beauty. She arranged a tournament where knights were to declare her the most beautiful woman in the world. However, one night boldly announced that Grognon was the ugliest woman alive, and that Princess Graciosa was the most beautiful. Graciosa guessed it was Percinet in disguise, but said nothing. Furious, Grognon decided to get rid of Graciosa once and for all. She ordered the princess to be taken to a forest far away, filled with wild animals. Alone in the dark forest, Graciosa stumbled through the trees, frightened and lost. She cried out, "Percinet, where are you?" Suddenly, a bright light lit up the forest, and the trees transformed into glittering buildings. At the end of a shining alley stood a crystal palace. Percinet appeared before her, more handsome than ever. He took her to the palace of his mother, the Fairy Queen, where Graciosa found comfort and safety. She stayed there for 8 days, but her heart was heavy with worry for her father. She learned that he believed she was dead, as Grognon had lied to him. Graciosa begged Percinet to take her home so she could tell her father the truth. Percinet reluctantly agreed and prepared his magical carriage. As they left, Graciosa saw the crystal palace crumble into dust behind them. "What is happening?" she asked in shock. Percinet sighed and said, "This palace exists only for those who have passed away. You will see it again only after death." Graciosa apologized for leaving and rejecting his love, understanding how much pain it must have caused him. Though saddened, Percinet silently vowed to continue protecting her from afar. When the princess saw her father, she had a hard time convincing him that she was still alive. The Duchess convinced the king that Graciosa wasn't the princess, just a girl who looked like her. Graciosa was thrown in prison for tricking the king. Grognon went to an evil fairy for help. "I need your help," she said. "I have a girl in prison who needs to be punished. Give her a hard task every day." The fairy gave Grognon a ball of rope made of very fine thread that was so tangled it had no end. Grognon told Graciosa, "Try to untangle this without breaking any threads. If you fail, you'll die." Graciosa started and broke hundreds of threads. She cried out, "Percinet, please help me." Suddenly, Percinet appeared. "I'm here, princess," he said. He touched the rope with his magic wand, and it untangled. "Is there anything else you need?" he asked. "Thank you, Percinet," Graciosa said. "You can come with me and be happy," said the fairy prince. But Graciosa said nothing, and Percinet vanished. The next day, the Duchess saw that Graciosa had completed her task. The fairy was scolded. "Come up with something she can't do," Grognon said. The fairy brought a basket of millions of feathers and told Graciosa to sort them by bird species. Graciosa tried but couldn't tell the difference. She cried, thinking, "Percinet doesn't love me, or he would be here." Just then, Percinet appeared. He tapped his magic wand 3 times, and the feathers flew out and sorted themselves into piles by bird species. "How can I thank you?" Graciosa asked. "Love me," Percinet answered softly, and left. When Grognon saw that Graciosa had completed the task, she became furious. She told the fairy to come up with something else. The fairy gave Grognon a box. "Give this to the princess and tell her not to open it. If she opens it, she will be punished," the fairy said. Grognon gave the box to Graciosa and ordered her not to open it. Graciosa went on her way, but she grew tired and hungry. She decided to rest in the forest. She thought, "I'll just open the box for a second. No one will know." She opened it, and little people jumped out. They ran and played, and Graciosa tried to catch them. She called for Percinet, and he appeared again. With his magic wand, he sent all the little people back into the box. When Grognon saw that Graciosa had completed yet another task, she became very angry. She ordered a hole to be dug in the garden. "Under this stone is a treasure," she said. "Lift it, and you'll see." As Graciosa tried to move the stone, Grognon pushed her into the hole and let the stone fall on top of her. It seemed that there was no hope for Graciosa. "Oh, Percinet," she said, "why didn't I marry you?" Then she saw a light coming from a small door. She remembered what Percinet had said, that she would see the fairy castle after her death. She crawled through the door into a beautiful garden. There she found Percinet waiting for her. Graciosa cried happy tears. She married Percinet, and they lived happily ever after. But their happiness didn't come easily. Graciosa never forgot the days she spent in prison, and the unfair tasks Grognon had given her. She realized how lucky she was to have Percinet's help. He had always been there when she needed him, even though she hadn't returned his love before. She felt guilty for not loving him sooner. One day, as they walked through the garden, Graciosa said, "I regret not seeing your love for me sooner, Percinet. I was so blind." Percinet smiled gently and held her hand. "You were in a difficult situation, Graciosa. It wasn't easy for you, but we're together now. That's all that matters." As the days passed, the couple became closer, and Graciosa learned to appreciate Percinet's kindness and magic. They spent their days enjoying the beauty of the fair fairy garden and their nights under the stars. They laughed, shared stories, and dreamed of a future filled with love and happiness. Though Grognon's evil magic had caused much pain, it had also led Graciosa to realize the true meaning of love. She learned that love is not something to be taken for granted, and she vowed never to let it slip away again. She was forever grateful to Percinet for his unwavering support and for showing her the depth of true love. Years went by, and Graciosa and Percinet ruled their kingdom with kindness and wisdom. They became known far and wide for their fairness and their love for one another. And though their story began with hardship, it ended with a happily ever after where love conquered all.